Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining in today from wherever you are around the world. Please drop in the chat where you're joining us from. We have a great live audience, and the first 30 minutes that we just chatted with Ramangu was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I learned a lot about how to remove undifferentiated heavy lifting, how they work backwards from customers, all the things you typically hear from AWS. We had a chance to dive deeply into, and I love it when partners bring a demo. I am Dr. Karen Hildebrand. I am hosting Industries Live every other Tuesday from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time. So put it on your calendars if you've enjoyed today. And next 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about financial services. So continue to come back and hear about different industries because there's a lot of connective tissue between industries and ideas you can borrow from one that can be applied to another. And I think that's particularly true today of the gaming industry. So with that, I am Dr. Karen Hildebrand. I lead our partner solutions architects across a number of different industries, including financial services, healthcare and life sciences, telecommunications, media and entertainment, games, and sports. And I am joined by one of my team members, Patrick. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Patrick Balmer. I'm a principal solution architect here at AWS. I focus on games and AI ML, and I get the privilege really to have a lot of fun with my customers and partners. We talk about a lot of cutting edge technologies and how to really push the envelope, and also really make sure that we're bringing value.
That's fantastic. Okay, we're 30 minutes in. Best part of the previous 30 minutes before I bring our next guests on.
I really like that it's comprehensive solution, right? And not just a patchwork. And so by having it it gives you the ability to bring something new. Like, what are the possibilities? The fact that you can have, a number of people from across the world all experiencing like a performance session, something they hadn't really thought of. And so I really like to see that you put in these baseline technologies and then build from that.
I really like that. That's fantastic. Actually, it's a great way to say we get to the creative process faster. And I think that is exactly what our customers want, right? So I will say, keep dropping in the chat where you're from, but our first person who has dropped in that they are from the USA. So live from Palm Beach by way of Brooklyn. Curious path. I love it. So keep dropping in where you're from, any of the questions you have for our guests. And with that, let's bring Christoffer on from modl.ai.
Hello there.
Hey there, Christoffer. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. So hello. My name's Christoffer Holmgård, one of the founders of a company called modl.ai. And I guess, super briefly about myself. I've been doing video games since 2008. So I started out as a video game developer all the way back when at this point. But then since 2011, I've worked in artificial intelligence and machine learning.
I love that. We're going to be friends. That is what I did my doctorate degree in. So I love artificial intelligence, and Patrick and I nerd out about it all the time. And it looks like we're having a little bit of tech issues. So Patrick, that just means that you and I get to chat until Christoffer is able to join back in.
Sure. So, what really interesting me for AI ML is the automation, right? Like, how can you bring and scale yourself and your team and make something bigger? And so I always find that really, really interesting to talk about.
I think that is exactly what most of our customers are looking for, is what are the ways in which they can do more and the ways that they can improve the overall quality of what it is that they are doing as well. So those are kind of the two use cases that have immediate benefit. Christoffer, are you able to speak a little bit more to the customer benefit that we typically see?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me again, Karen?
Yes, I can.
That's great. So yeah, I mean, coming from game development myself and everyone at modl.ai, we come originally from game development and artificial intelligence for games, right? And so when we started the company, a lot of things that we decided that we wanted to build out a model were driven by some of the needs that we had seen ourselves through 10 15 years of game development. And it just like turns out that one of those things that you end up spending a lot of time on when you're building games is testing them or kind of like interacting with them. We saw that just a second ago, where with Remongo, they have a solution for getting into the game and playing it really easily, kind of like manually. Where we come into the process is that we say, what if you actually didn't have to spend a bunch of manual time, but you had an AI playing your game for you and testing it? Because we've just seen from our own experiences how much time we had to spend interacting with the games, and that of course takes away from development time.
And that's really cool coming from the background of being game developers yourselves. You know exactly where you enjoyed spending the time versus the time that was less fun, right? And being able to scale that across your entire game. Tell us a little bit more about how you're able to approach that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one side of it is, of course, you want to solve your own pain. But then, when we took that to market, we also were fortunate enough to see that other game developers felt the same way. So the way that we go about it is that we take game builds from game developers and we put them on our platform, which is on AWS, of course. So imagine that you get a game build, comes out to you out of your build pipeline, your automation systems, goes to us at modl.ai. And then we take that game and we start, not just one copy, but maybe 10 or 20 or 50 or even 100. And we run those at the same time. And then we're collecting data while it's running in the cloud. So that's kind of like our approach. We say, like, if you can run all of that testing in parallel, well, then you get your results much faster than if you had to coordinate a bunch of people doing that, or you had to do it serially, or maybe you were doing automation on site in your game studio. So that's really where we see a lot of value add comes in from the cloud, right? That you can do all of this like work at the same time.
It's also really interesting, right, that like games are now getting more complex. Like players are demanding more engaging long-term content for a game, and you have to keep adding content, right? And so that, complexity creates, QA nightmares, and testing is always, feels like a struggle. And so being able to take advantage of AI to kind of augment that seems like a lot of wins. Have you seen like areas like with some of your customers where, there's areas of testing that they were able to accomplish or feel like, back in the day when consoles came out on cartridge, that game had to be 100% in its in QA, there could be no bugs, right? And nowadays games have a day one patch. Have you working with your customers, have you seen like improvements using AI for this kind of QA testing?
Yeah, definitely in multiple different ways. So I guess we actually have two stories that might sort of like show this from two different sides of the industry. So one is from a relatively small studio that had to ship a lot of content, and the other one is from a super large studio that just keeps bringing out content all the time. So if we take the first one, like from the little studio or the smaller studio, kind of like a mid-sized indie game studio. So this is a game that we supported for a year and a half. And if we share my screen, I can just show you a couple of videos for that game. But basically, what they were doing out of this game studio was that they were shipping a twin stick looter shooter, which is like this big environment where big maps and everything, where 4 people can play together, and you have to move around like this map, fighting enemies and things like that. So what we did for them was that we put in our AI agents, our bots, into the game so that they would play it. This was a team of 40 people, and they were shipping 100 levels with 3 variations of each. So that means they were building out 300 levels at the same time, and we had like one QA person to test this, right? So the only way that you can really address that with a small team is to run things in parallel and actually, build out these automated testing solutions. So that's what we did for that team. We helped them for a year and a half with our bots running in their game there, and I can actually show you what that would look like. So when they were interacting with the results of this, the game builds would go to our platform, and that's what you're seeing here, a bunch of different game builds that made it up to us, but we ran tests over. And then whenever a test would run, we would basically record a video like this. So this is running on a virtual machine in the cloud. You can see what the AI is doing. You can see, all the different errors that might kind of come up, what might be happening. If you have any code level errors, we would lift those up to folks so they could go back, the developers could figure out where that was happening in the code. But we'd also visualize it. So here's a map of one of the levels. And if you then click on this map, the developers would be able to see, okay, where did the bot actually go? What part of the level did we visit? You can even see that there's some sort of like cheat going on here, kind of like a speedrun hack or something, because you're suddenly just like teleporting from one side to the other. But I think the thing that actually ended up being most important for this team was that whenever this was running, we would also characterize the performance out of this. And they were having issues kind of like just getting, making sure that the game would run smoothly on any kind of computer, right? So whenever we would do these tests with all these different levels, we would also characterize it in performance, and they would then use that to make sure that they were hitting the targets so that that they could serve, their customers, which are the players in the end, right? And make sure that that it would run super smoothly on computers out there. So that's one example where, because I think, the expectations from the player base doesn't change just because you're a small studio. Everybody's looking for, I mean, you mentioned Patrick, right? It's, yes, you can do a day one patch, but games are really just, assessed on the quality these days. So even if you're a small team, you gotta be able to compete with the big ones in terms of quality.
Yeah, and with that, right, like with mobile, there's so many different platforms for like Android, right? Like being able to test all of them is, it's important, right? Because you want, your game to go out there and be able to hit the frame rates that are required. But being able to test all of them in all the different configurations available, that's really hard to do.
That's exactly right. And so that's sort of like on the other side of the fence from some of our larger mobile customers. We work with a number of mid-sized and large mobile publishers in modl.ai. And what we've seen consistently there is that, even if you're running, a world-class game, one of the biggest titles out there, these titles will have to put out new content updates maybe every week, maybe every 2 weeks. And even if you're running that with a team of, maybe 40 people full time, who are just like spending all their time testing that game, you can't cover all the content that you're putting out. Many games, even of that scope, will only be 50% tested whenever they release an update, because there's just like not enough time to do it manually. And I mean, that's obviously where we come in with this solution as well. Now I showed you what it looks like for an action game. But what we've been doing recently for mobile games is that we've been taking an approach where the kind of bots that you saw playing the game before, we've been taking the same approach just for mobile games instead, and 2D interaction. And now we just had a Unity crash here. That's always great. Let me just get that up again.
That's what QA is for. That's what QA is for.
That's why you need testing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just give me a second while I get that back up. But what we do in those kinds of engagements is that again, we'll connect to the studio, so they have their own build pipelines in the cloud, and then whenever they do a build for PC, but also for Android or for iOS, that makes it over to us, and we have our bots then operate and interact with the game whenever one of these new builds come up. So you wouldn't use it in the Unity editor like I'm doing now. I just have it set up this way so that I can press play and hopefully show you how it actually operates. The game over here. Yeah, there we go. Now things are happening. That's better. So you can kind of like imagine how you'll have this AI agent that's automatically stepping through, again, 20 different copies on this on all sorts of different devices with different formats, screen layouts, things like that. Now, when we do that, what we also do is we build a little internal kind of like representation, or this is a tree graph of the UI. So it's a different way of like representing the UI, right? And every time we're clicking on a button here, or we're interacting with something in the game, we're adding it into this list. And what that allows us to do is to keep track of how much of the game have we seen, and basically try to get to 100%. That's what the bot is trying to do here. It's trying to visit every little part of the game, make sure that it's tested everything, make sure that it's clicked everything and interacted with anything that's available to it. And again, you wanna imagine that you have a bunch of these running at the same time, and that they're all going through like this flow. So it's kind of like a very fire and forget approach to QA. You just like put the bots in there once, and then going forward, whenever you have a new build, it gets tested automatically. Now, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna ask you, is that AI technology is changing really quickly. So what are you seeing that your like AI bot QA technologies, like what is it good at now? Like, you're like, yes, we can get 100% coverage for these types of problems, and these are the areas that are kind of where we're headed in the future.
Yeah, so I think getting to see all the game and getting to 100% coverage, that's useful in itself, of course, because then we can just try and put the game through its paces and stress test everything. But the other thing that we're seeing is important is that you also need to address the analysis step of this. So it's not enough that we can just like play the game. That's interesting, but that generates a bunch of data that somebody still needs to, engage with or figure out like what the next step is. So what we've taken to together with some of our customers recently is that we've taken that bot that I showed you just a second ago, and then we've started also adding on an analysis part to the data set that it produces. And unfortunately, I can't show you from one of the live customers that we have, but we did do a little demo here from a game that we put together for this for things that we found on the Unity Asset Store. So you can get an example of it. So if you or an idea of like how it works. So if you imagine that bot playing through the game that I showed you just a second ago, and here we have another video recording of a bot stepping through. This could be your typical iPad game, or it could be a mobile game. You can see how it's like clicking around the interface, how it's going to every part, like going for that coverage that we talked about a second ago. Now, one of the things that we figured out or found is that this video in itself is pretty valuable, because this is the documentation of all the different steps that you went through. And if we take that video and then find the most interesting parts of it, it becomes a great target for an application of generative AI. So what we've started to do with that is that we take these like frames that we find in the video, and then we send them off to AI models in the cloud also, of course, and then ask the model to basically have a look at this and tell us if you're seeing anything that's like suspicious, anything that you think might be of interest to a human QA person.
That is super fascinating. So you've given us a couple of like different data points of how much more of the game is actually getting tested before it launches, how much more or how much quicker you're able to actually achieve that, and then a way that GenAI can be applied. It feels like you already have a lot of working backwards from customers. Maybe I want to double down on Patrick's question here of like, it looks like you are constantly evolving based on what customers are asking for you. Is there something that you're really excited about that's coming next that you can give us a little tease on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're totally right. I mean, many of our features have been co-developed with the customers that we have. So we always look at our roadmap up against like, how can we create more value? What are your most pressing concerns or issues in your workflow or process, right? So a couple of things that we're working on that we're really excited about is that, as you can see here in this like video reporting system, we're finding like different issues and things like that. You can also tell the system with feedback whether this is a valid bug or not. So we have kind of like this idea, okay, the AI says, I think we're missing some artwork here. There's something called the Bay card. And open up here, we can say, okay, that's actually true. So what you can do then as a user is that you can feedback the information, whether this is true or not, and then the system learns from it. And so we've started to do that, but then specializing that into different areas of QA flows. So not just saying like generically, is there kind of like an issue here, but saying like, oh, can you help me find localization issues? Or can you help me find graphical issues? Like things like that, where the user gains more control over what the AI system does, because we're providing input and training it.
Super cool. So you're using reinforcement learning. You still have human in the loop. I'm curious, are you using some agents to actually interrogate its own results here as well? So it's fully automated?
Not yet, but that's a place we'd love to go. I think that's a fantastic idea. So obviously, you could take this and then summarize across all the different results. You could ask an agent to, if it had access to your code base, maybe even go have a look. I mean, not tomorrow, maybe not like this year, but eventually we'd like to get to a place where what you get out of this is a pull request for your code repository, right?
Right. It's also important, like with a lot of these systems, you're going to run into very similar issues, right? And so you want it so that all, similar problems all kind of get clustered together and kind of reported together. So if you're looking at patterns, but also not overloading the user by having 300, issues that are all really just one bug.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think summarizing and aggregating is super important. And I think also, being able to learn across games is super valuable as well. So that's one of the benefits that you get when you serve multiple customers, is that you get to see, examples from different kinds of games. So the next game coming in can then benefit from some of that potentially as well. There are things to consider there in terms of like, data sharing, and sometimes you'll have to keep data separate for individual customers. Sometimes you'll be allowed to use it across. But I think the more we'll be able to use data across the games industry from different examples, the more will be, it'll be kind of like a rising tide that lifts all boats. So we definitely hope in model AI that this is something that the games industry will remain open to going forward.
So it's interesting, right? You're creating bots that play the game. Now, does it help, like if you were going to do QA testing for multiplayer? It kind of seems like there's an overlap there where you have bots who can play the game, but at the same time, you also want to test multi-user, and playing. So is there a way that can work together?
Yeah, so we've done that for certain titles already. So what you do there is that you would start, not just like one copy of the game client, but maybe you start multiple, and then you have the bots interact up against the multiplayer server as well. What we found there is that you typically need more kind of like human-like interaction with the game for that to be really valuable. So yeah, I mean, you can definitely, with basic interaction, you can do things like load testing, stress testing, different kinds of performance testing. And then if you want to understand the game as such, then you need the bots to actually play the game more like a human player. That's something that we've done with imitation learning in the past. We've just found that these solutions take a little more work and are a little less generic still than many of these like QA applications.
All right, so we have a lot of people joining from all over the world. What is the best thing that they could do as a next step? They're interested. They're like, hey, this is a really cool partner. I've never heard about it. Thank you, AWS, for bringing it on. Thank you, Patrick, for asking hard questions. Christoffer, you've showed a great demo. Are there other things that you're like, hey, if you're joining from, let's see, South India right now, what would be the next step that they would be doing in order to be able to actually leverage what you've built as a platform if they're a game developer? How can they test?
So the way that we work right now is reach out to us on sales at modl.ai and send us an email or go to our website and same URL, of course, and fill out a form. And we'd love to talk to teams who are looking to get into this kind of automation. And I would say, wherever you are in the game development process, no matter how long you are, how far you are along your roadmap, it's never too soon to start thinking about the testing aspect, because once your game does scale, you'd wish you had it in place already. That's always how it goes in the games industry. So please, reach out to us there, and we're always happy to take a look, evaluate if the game is a fit, or even just comment on AI and testing practices and strategies.
Super cool. And Patrick, I'm going to ask you the same question, but from a different person who has put it in the chat here. All right, we're talking about partners. There's also AWS services. Tell me again a little bit of like, how do we work as AWS in the games area and with partners to help meet what customers are asking for?
Yeah, so AWS has been working in AI for quite a long time, and so we have a lot of services and expertise, right? And again, building from the Legos, you can start from, training your models all the way up to kind of managed services. So what's really nice with something like Bedrock is that maybe you only need these large language models for some of your processing that you do offline, right? And so you can take advantage of that. You pay for what you use when you use it, and you don't pay any additional, right? And so that's really nice. But also, there's a lot of kind of hybrid work being done in games where we're looking at bringing some models on device, but it's also going to be working with some models in the cloud, right? And so you have that entire like ecosystem that you can put together your strategy for how you're going to work with these technologies. And so working with like modl.ai, they take these technologies and make something bigger and better. And that's what we get a lot of these partners who in the AI space really are bringing their expertise that they've been working on for, for 8-9 years, right? They've been in this space, and they've really created some unique technologies. And then by being a partner on AWS, right, you get to kind of bring them in like another Lego piece into your whole story, right, and your whole strategy, right? You're going to take each one of these partners. It's not going to be one partner that builds everything. You're going to take and work with like 7 or 8 or 9 partners to kind of create your entire pipeline. And so, it's a really, really interesting space that's, that is really cutting edge. And you're every day, every week, you're seeing something that is really exciting, and that you're like, wow, I never really thought of that. Oh, that's really pushing the button. And so it's a great place to be.
That's super cool. And Christoffer, I have to say, I had a favorite moment in this whole conversation of actually seeing the mapping of where the bot was going, and actually the layout of it. That was my favorite part, because in my head, that completely tracked into, I started my career in retail, and we used to do planogram layouts and figuring out where people were moving through a store. We do that still in hospital systems to understand patient movement. But I had to say, I'd never thought about it from an actual bot playing a game. So you blew my mind. That was awesome. Christoffer, you have a minute of, I feel like I'm doing the Hot Wings episode. Tell us about what you want everybody that's watching here to bring home with them. And maybe next time, Patrick, if you're co-hosting with me again, we have to do like some sort of vegan wing at the end, and we have to eat the spiciest version. But Christoffer.
Cauliflower.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Well, I mean, the intersection of games, AI, and cloud is a super fascinating space, and you're getting all of these like synergistic interactions between them. I think we're only going to see games get bigger and made more quickly, having more content. Obviously, we want to be part of like enabling that through automated QA. But I just want to tell everyone who's watching and who's interested, this is a perfect time to get started in all those 3 domains, because so many interesting things are being enabled in games, AI, and tech right now. So thanks.
Appreciate it. Patrick, last 30 seconds before we do our outro here.
I'm really excited about how, like, once you get beyond just these kind of basic technologies and what AI brings, you start to really kind of create a creative space to work in, right, and really be able to push. So that fusion of art and storytelling, right? Games has always been that kind of marriage, like equal partners. And so AI kind of brings this to another player into that orchestration. So I'm really excited about where we're going.
Well, that brings us to the end of Industries Live for another Tuesday. We are live every other Tuesday with different industries. So please join us from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time. I think our furthest joiner just dropped in from Japan. So exciting to have so many people around the world joining us to talk about games today. Thank you, Christoffer, for your time. Thank you, Patrick, for co-hosting with me today. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.